Hello and welcome to this training on billing accuracy and inappropriate payment resolution. My name is John Massaro. I'm the Administrator of Governance, Risk Management, and Compliance here at the Barber National Institute.
And I'm Jennifer Kennedy, the Manager of Corporate Compliance.
Now, you may commonly know billing as a billing function rather than compliance. But what Jen and I are going to do today is that we're not going to teach you how to bill for services or collect the payments that you're entitled to. But we want to give you an appreciation for the regulatory requirement that requires us to produce claims that contain accurate information related to both the client and the services rendered, the need to send the information along to the payers as quickly as possible, and to back up all of the data with complete and comprehensive documentation that describes and supports the services that were rendered. You're probably involved in this in some fashion in the data entry and/or documentary process. We'll also touch briefly on policies which require us to return money to payers when it's deemed that documentation doesn't accurately reflect back on the services that were rendered and have therefore been inappropriately paid to us.
So to first talk about billing accuracy and the data elements that will ensure the generation of claims that are acceptable to the payers, because they're populated with information that's required for timely payment to be sent back to us in response. As such, I will discuss the importance of the data being accurate and being entered into CareLogic systems in a timely manner, completely detailing the services that were rendered to the clients and the necessity for it to be in accordance with government regulations and as contracted with the payers of services.
It is critical that all money expended for clients' treatment, education, and oversight be received as fast as possible following the rendering of these services. Now, contracts with payers always include timelines that must be adhered to prevent denial of payment. Coding based on the record of the services as documented by clinicians, teachers, and caregivers must be accurately represented, and balances due from secondary payers and/or clients' families, which include co-payments and deductibles, must be recognized and billed out quickly once a primary payment is received. This is known as a waterfall process. In order for operational expenses to be covered and for payrolls to be generated back to employees, enough cash must be on hand at all times. While it's possible to borrow money as needed, it's an expensive proposition in today's banking climate and must be avoided.
So let's discuss accurate documentation. Beyond the obvious required elements such as client name, date of birth, family contact information, including addresses and phone numbers, the payer of record data and service locations, descriptions of care rendered must be specific with accurate dates and times notated, and signatures and co-signatures, which also must be dated and timed. Corrections and additions to previously recorded information are required to be noted, dated, timed, and initialed. If working electronically, these same changes require online addendums. In the event of an audit by government agencies, insurance companies, or our own internal Governance, Risk Management, and Compliance Office, all of these elements will be reviewed for accuracy and thoroughness. All information is part of our legal record and definitely subject to regulatory scrutiny.
Now, federal and state laws govern all of these processes, and any and all payers of record are very specific as to what information is acceptable and what is not, and adherence to regulation is tested for compliance during audits. Where information is found to be missing or what's documented does not tie to the service that was billed, we are at risk of not being paid. Additionally, we can be fined for failing to follow the rules, and additional auditing may be initiated. B&I can even be subject to contract cancellation and the loss of its operational licensing, effectively closing down badly needed services.
So, for your part, what exactly should you do and how should you do it to ensure full compliance at all times?
I think the first thing, Jen, is that client data input is the first area where accurate reporting is a must. Not only does it need to be collected, but it must be right. Names need to be spelled correctly, home addresses, phone numbers, client's date of birth are all part of a complete record. Names and addresses of those responsible for receiving information and bills, such as parents, either both or individual if they're different, need to be exact. Changes to this information can be made in the system at any time, if and when you're made aware of them. Lastly, any and all required payer information, including private insurances, must be entered completely. This entails company name, identification numbers, sometimes known as group numbers or policy numbers, and where required, authorization for the services.
Also, the CareLogic system profile related to payers is set up to recognize a hierarchy or priority, where a client has more than one payer, and many of our clients do. All must be accounted for in the order shown on the screen. It is not your responsibility to memorize this listing. The system is set up to waterfall through the list based on all the entries in a single client's payer record. However, please be aware that this order exists out of necessity, and it is critical to billing accuracy. Payer orders should not be changed manually on a client's record, except by staff who are responsible for that function.
So the takeaway so far from all the information we've presented to you was fairly simple. Make sure that all data gathered and recorded can be read and understood by any and all others who may be responsible for entering or viewing it. It must be accurate, totally inclusive of all regulated elements of care. This includes dates, times of day, and required signatures. Lastly, timely entry is critical. That is, services on any given day, where possible, must be entered that day or as soon afterwards to ensure a complete and compliant record. This ensures that compliance for all billing, payment, and auditing that will be done as a result of these services so that comprehensive operations can continue here at B&I.
The second policy referred to in this presentation addresses resolution of the receipt of inaccurate and therefore inappropriate payments, or simply put, refunds to payers. When money is received from any source, it is verified through both system reporting back to the accounts receivable department, as well as routine monitoring by that staff for accuracy against the contracts. Where we find that claims are overpaid, we must immediately take steps to identify why, and if indicated, to send it back. Based on federal regulation, the time limit set by the government, and by extension all payers, is for reimbursement to occur within 60 days of our receipt. That may take the form of a check being physically sent or an adjusted billing being sent through the payer system. Where we find a pattern of overpayments, we must check for systemic issues on both our end and that of the payers. Sometimes, an improper payment can be an error on the part of a payer. We still have an obligation to point this out to them vis-a-vis a refund. If we find that we have routinely sent unsubstantiated data or incorrect codes and so have been paid when we should not have been, we have to disclose to that payer and the government that we are responsible and detail exactly why. Generally, the government will look more favorably on us and not assess fines or perform additional audits. If we don't disclose, we open ourselves up to intense government scrutiny, which is a place we don't want to be.
So lastly, we've provided you with the names, phone numbers, and email addresses of individuals at B&I, including us, who may be contacted with any questions or concerns. Please don't ever hesitate to get in touch with any of us. That includes the compliance office, as well as the billing office, for any reason related to these issues. Thank you very much for joining us today and for this training. Any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us.